and be allowed to increase the number of full fee-paying students, focusing on specialist degree courses. Other regional and outer suburban universities would have increased numbers for undergraduate, general degree courses and be much more reliant on government funding. The plan has been embraced by some educationists as the way of the future, but others argue it would accentuate divisions between the haves and have-nots. Nick Grimm reports.
There'll always be something quite British about the Gothic revival splendour of our elite so-called sandstone universities. But it seems the future for these halls of learning is one that borrows much more heavily on the American college system. And it's a future some fear.
It seems to me that the notion that the US has something to tell us about how to run a university system it makes you scratch your head. Why?
This is about internationalising the system, and one of the things for which America is positively known is having amongst the highest ranking, highest quality universities in the world.
It would return Australia to a time where only those who had the money could go to university and get the degrees to get a better education and to get a better start.
And as we can see from our example,
for the past 2 decades, as government funding has become increasingly stretched, there's been a shift to a more user-pays system for Australia's university students. But last week, that process received a fresh kick-along by one of Australia's top-ranked institutions. The Vice-Chancellor of the University of Melbourne, Professor Glyn Davis, revealed his plans to introduce an American-style 2-tiered system at his institution.
The Australian electorate has clearly shown no appetite for significant additional public funding for universities. We have to take that message on board. We've heard loud and clear what has been said through multiple elections, that we have to look after ourselves.
Last week, Federal Education Minister Brendan Nelson thought it was an idea worth entertaining.
If Professor Davis thinks that for some reason he'd like to offer more places on a fee-paying basis to Victorians and indeed to Australians, then I would be prepared to consider it.
This week, it seems Brendan Nelson now likes the idea so much that he's keen to see other Australian universities try to become what he's called the Harvard of the South.
Well, what we need in Australia are multiple tiers of higher education. And if you look at Harvard and some of the best performing and best ranked universities throughout the world, they actually will have a relatively small but highly specialised group of undergraduate programs. They'll be extremely research intensive in the areas that they undertake research in, and students who go into those kinds of universities have usually done a degree program in any one of a number of universities and institutions, many of which in fact may not undertake much research at all.
Now what this is the Americanisation of the Australian university system. It's a product of starvation.
The concept would see students expected to go to smaller, less prestigious universities in outer suburban and regional areas to obtain their first degree in a general discipline like arts or science. Then the elite few, the top performers, would be offered a place at one of the leading universities to complete a postgraduate degree in more specialist subjects like medicine or law.
Our responsibility is to make sure that we offer as affordable education as we can, but at a quality that actually trains people to be professional.
The lure for the so-called sandstone universities would be the opportunity to offer more positions to full fee-paying students. Professor Gavin Brown is the Vice-Chancellor of the University of Sydney, another of the nation's leading tertiary institutions. He argues costly research facilities can't be duplicated at every university.
There just isn't enough money to go around, and therefore it's logical to have some specialisations of mission inside that system. That's what happens in America.
But you get a different perspective if you ask his counterpart at one of Australia's regional universities. Professor Sally Walker is from Deakin University in Geelong in Victoria.
The suggestion is that universities should be either undergraduate universities or postgraduate universities. I don't think that that is a sustainable scenario in any way. If that were to happen, it would create a brain drain from rural and regional universities.
What worries critics is that the system will see Australia's universities divvied up into the haves and the have-nots, the haves being those with the money for research and world-class facilities. Don Aitken is a former Vice-Chancellor of the University of Canberra and a former Chairman of the Australian Research Council. He's also taught at a number of universities in the United States.
It has a system, or a lack of a system, that's appropriate to an extraordinarily large country. We are not, and our population distribution and our culture and our history are not like the US at all. And no other country in the world, to my knowledge, has copied the American system.
Students, meanwhile, are worried that any such changes will put many degrees out of their financial reach.
It means your HECS debt's going to increase because you're paying HECS on your first degree, and then it means that when you finish your first degree, you've got to also have the cash there to pay full fees for a second degree, and there's just a huge section of the public that aren't going to be able to do that.
But it seems the campaign to stop the introduction of this reform blueprint might be a battle lost before it had even begun. Here in the elegant sandstone surroundings of Australia's oldest place of higher learning, the University of Sydney, the Americanisation of our education system is already well underway.
We're introducing a large number of degrees in which people enter at postgraduate level. That's true of medicine, of dentistry, of nursing. We're moving that way in the allied health sciences. And for many years we've had a combined law-arts degree where students have a liberal arts start before concentrating on the more professional courses in the law.
So essentially this is happening anyway.
That's correct, but I'm nervous about full Americanisation. I think that I don't want all of the postgraduate courses to be nakedly fee-paying.
The government is trying to force more money out of students' pockets, basically, essentially to provide them with the same education that they are currently receiving under a HECS-funded system.
But on that score, the Federal Education Minister today offered this assurance.
I can guarantee that moves like this will result in more government-funded university places throughout Australia. Instead, we're looking at a question of quality. We're looking about where those undergraduate places and government-funded places are going to be, and also responding to increasing demand not only in Australia but indeed internationally.
Nick Grimm with that report. It's touted as the next scientific frontier with the potential to cure some of society's most troubling diseases. But the rarefied world of stem cell research has been rocked by scandal. Widely considered the international leader in the field, the head of South Korea's embryonic research team, Hwang Woo-suk, has been accused of breaching ethics. But the scandal has failed to derail the signing of an agreement in Perth today, which will see Australian scientists cooperating with their Korean counterparts on biotechnology. Australian scientists are now hoping the federal government will relax laws which so far have stopped them following South Korea's lead in cloning human embryos for stem cell research. Pro-life groups point to the scandal as evidence that laws restricting research with human embryos